me hit record. All right, I am recording. It is 3:30. We are ready to get going. So welcome again. This is Student Reflection and Digital Portfolios, Capturing Learning with Google Workspace for Education. So my name is Avra Robinson, and I'm an instructor with EdTechTeacher, and we are teamed up with Google for Education, as well as DESE, to bring these workshops to you. This is number 17. So we've been doing these, you guys, since summer, and they are all on our YouTube page. So if you on our YouTube channel, so if you want to go back and see what's there are tons of topics and just a lot of content, a lot of ideas there. You can go and watch them. So this is being recorded right now. For those people that join late or aren't able to join at all, no worries. This will be up on YouTube by tomorrow. So we are going to talk today about digital portfolios. We are focused, obviously, on Google tools. So there are lots of ways that we can make digital portfolios, but specifically today, we're here to chat about the Google tools. And so I'm going to kind of talk through the idea of portfolios, what could be included, some different thoughts and ideas for you to kind of consider. If you are new to the portfolio creation process, I'll give you a lot to think about, and hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes. When I first started creating portfolios a long time ago, I kind of just dove right in and didn't consider all of the factors and kind of made mistakes along the way. I think as educators, we do that a lot. So I'm going to hopefully share some of those experiences with you. Just a little bit about me. I've been an educator for 25 years. I've taught at every grade level, everything from preschool all the way up to graduate school. My favorite thing to do is work with you, though. I love working with pre-service teachers as well as teachers who are working right now to help support your students. So let's get started and talk about digital portfolios. You can share in the chat if you would like to, or you can just ponder to yourself for just a second. If I say the words digital portfolio, what does that mean to you? What do you think of when you think digital portfolio? I'm just going to pause for about 30 seconds, let you think about it. Anybody that wants to type in the chat, please feel free to do so. Ooh, that awkward Zoom wait time, right? All right. It doesn't look like anybody's typing in the chat. So I'm going to go through and tell you what I think of when I think about digital portfolios. And I will tell you that there's no right answer here, right? Everybody kind of looks at digital portfolios in different ways. And really, it's up to you in terms of what you're looking to do. So thank you, Heidi, for being one of the few people to say something, a way of measuring progress online. Exactly. So when we're looking at portfolios, it's definitely a way that we can measure growth over time. And that can be one of the most exciting things about it. And the online part, the digital part, really is just what makes it easy. Tiffany, collection of student work that demonstrates mastery. 100%. Absolutely. Again, no right answer, but those are both components of it when I think about it. So from my perspective, what's a digital portfolio? It's a collection of artifacts, right? So it's going to be all different things that are happening in classrooms with teachers and students, everything from a physical piece of paper to maybe a picture of math manipulatives to a video of someone's speech, so on and so forth. Todd says a place to show skills learned. Absolutely. So it's expansion of skills and knowledge, right? So it's a way that we can kind of collect what kids are doing and watch their skills grow by chronicling the experiences that we're having in classrooms. So it's just that opportunity to show growth over time. And that's what's the magic of these, is that you can start out with, kids in August or September. And if you want to do a year-long project, you can really see how kids grow and change. And it's awesome because kids can see how they grow and change. So you'll hear me talk about my son Cameron a lot today. He's a 5th grader who is, from my perspective, mom's perspective, brilliant and exceedingly verbal, but his self-esteem is way low. He doesn't read at grade level and he struggles with certain things. So when you can show him look how far you've come, dude. You're doing great. It can be a really great thing. So it's evidence of learning or mastery. Exactly. And Ben, what did you say? A way to celebrate student learning and growth with families and get kids in the driver's seat of their own education. I want you all to know that I did not pay Ben to say that, but exactly proved my last point. It's an opportunity for pride and joy and celebration of learning. So you guys, right now, here we are in January of 2022. We're in like what? How many months now of this pandemic, and teachers are tired. And we've all been, just feeling like we're on hamster wheels for the better part of 2 years. And I think a lot happens in classrooms anyway, but has happened in classrooms in the last 2 years. But all the progress and all the good stuff can fall by the wayside when teachers start to feel disheartened because you're so exhausted, right? So I think portfolios are a chance for you as teachers or you as educators to be able to look at what's going on and go, you know what, all right, I feel like we didn't get to nearly as much as I wanted to, but we did get a lot done, right? And look at this awesome progress in reading. If you're having kids record themselves for reading fluency, like say we're down in the elementary grades, and we watch that progress. We listen to the fluency get stronger and stronger. Or maybe you're working with middle school or high school kids who are struggling with math skills, but then all of a sudden that light turns on and you can see their progress change and head in a different direction. So I think when we think about digital portfolios, there's lots of opportunities. So there are lots of different types of portfolios, you guys, and they're not limited to these, but the big ones that I always talk about, you've got your showcase or your presentation portfolio, right? So this is going to be that, opportunity for the pride and the growth and all of that. It's kids' best work and putting their best foot forward. So you might spend time as you're going through the curation process and deciding what's going to go in that portfolio. You're going to pick, the stuff where they really excelled. And you're going to talk with kids about, hey, what makes you the most proud here? Let's put that in your portfolio. That's one type of portfolio. Another type of portfolio might be that growth or learning or progress portfolio. And this one, I will tell you, when I've done with kids, it's a little harder of a sell because kids don't always like to put the artifacts in that where they didn't have the concept mastered yet, right? Or they weren't as good at the reading fluency, that kind of thing. But it can be such an awesome tool, again, for them to see their growth over time. So then you may also consider like that mastery portfolio or an assessment portfolio. I was doing a similar session back a couple months ago, and I was working with a 8th grade teacher who had basically taken all of her standards and she kind of made herself a list and assigned artifacts to each standard. And she just made that list and said, this is what I'm going to have kids put in their portfolios throughout the year. And that way I can make sure that I'm, nailing all those standards and that I'm hitting all of the stuff I want to hit. So you can absolutely set it up in a variety of ways. And the variety really, our last one, it's a hybrid or a combination of some of these things. So from my perspective, what I would suggest is you deciding as the educator, what's your purpose? What's your objective for the portfolios? Why do you want to make them? When I think about myself, I was a tech teacher for a long time. So from my perspective, it was really about the process of putting the portfolio together. It was those technology skills, right? Can we make a link? Can we put something in a folder digitally? Can we combine them in a slideshow or in a website to make the portfolio? But as a classroom teacher, it would be more about, hey, are kids demonstrating math skills? Are they demonstrating reading or writing skills? Those kinds of things. Maybe you're looking at it as an organizational opportunity, right? So there's going to be a lot of skills that are built into portfolio creation and organization and curation and making decisions and reflection all get built into it as well. So be thinking while I kind of explore ideas with you today about, what is your objective? What would your purpose be for the portfolios? Because that's really going to guide a lot of the decisions you're going to have to make. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the how and the why of digital portfolios. So from my perspective, it's really about making connections. Okay. It's about kids making connections. And, what do I mean by that, right? What are we making connections to? Well, to begin with, they're going to make connections to the content. So I think what happens a lot of times in schools and classrooms is that we get so overwhelmed and we get so busy. And sometimes we move from one activity to the next just because, hey, we've got a lot to get through, right? But when we can slow down a little bit and give kids the opportunity to reflect. So maybe they've just gone through some kind of learning experience. They've written an essay, or they've worked on math problems, or they've explored new content in social studies or science, whatever the content area is. Once they've gone through a learning experience, giving them the chance to say to themselves, like, what did I learn? But not only what did I learn, but how did I learn it? And why did I learn it? Did I feel successful? And if so, why? Did I, feel like this was a challenge and I struggled? And if so, why? Because when we ask them these kinds of questions and when we get them used to answering them, obviously we're building metacognitive skills, right? But also they're going to get used to answering them and they're going to start to figure out who they are as a learner. So you guys, I feel like I didn't figure out who I was as a learner until I was maybe a freshman in college, to be completely honest. I started figuring stuff out when I started struggling in my classes. I figured out that when I'm reading nonfiction, I need to read it out loud to myself. I need to hear it at the same time as read it. Okay. I don't know what that means about me, but that was a skill then that I took into the rest of college. Man, if I had figured that out when I was 12, that would have been really helpful. So I think when we can slow down and give kids the chance to make connections to the content and start to think about who they are as learners, that can be one of the wonderful byproducts of portfolio creation. Kids can make connections to each other. They can make connections with you. So when we take the time to build reflection into the learning process, and I'm not talking about having kids do something in class and then for homework, they have to go home and write a paragraph and reflect on it, right? I don't want to see reflection be an afterthought. I don't want it to be the thing that they have to do later, right? I would love to see it built into the day whenever possible, even just a quick think, pair, share, or a turn and talk with a partner. What was your experience? Hey, Ms. Robinson just explained the causes of the Civil War. What did you learn? What did you hear? Giving kids a chance to stop and talk and reflect with each other and think about what they are learning in different experiences can be a really powerful thing. It's also really powerful when you meet with them, and even in small groups or individually, and you're working with kids on portfolio creation, because you're doing things like discussing progress or creating goals. And, when we have conversations about that kind of artifact curation, so making choices about what we're going to include and why we're going to include it, that all is a really powerful connection that kids make to the content, but they also make it to you and to their friends if they're working in groups. So those are some thoughts for you. So then, that might be some why. But let's talk about how, right? Like, so how do we go from the 3-ring binder or the file folder, right, to something digital? When I was a teacher for 15 years, I was in the same school, and it was a K-8 building, and we had a writing portfolio that kids kind of followed them from K to 8. And I will tell you, it was from 2000 to 2015 or so. So it was a file folder. And the kindergarten teacher put 3 writing samples in it. And then the first grade teacher did the same thing, and so on and so forth. So by the time my daughter, who graduated from 8th grade there, when she left, she had this nice portfolio. It was very simple, but it was a portfolio of her work. So that was our physical, right? And sometimes they become 3-ring binders. But how do we make it digital? Well, these days, it's a lot easier because we've got, devices that'll do it for us. But what we have to think about is all of the process that we're going to have here to creating portfolios. And you guys, I'll talk more about each of these steps as I go through. I want you to know that it doesn't have to be in this order. It's not linear, and you don't have to do all these steps all the time. Okay. So to begin with, kids are going to create, right? They're going to do stuff in your class. If you are middle school or high school, there may be writing essays and things like that. If you're in elementary school, they may be working with math manipulatives, or in any classroom, they might be working with a group. So you might even have a video of kids working together, collaborating, because maybe that's the focus of a lesson. So whatever's happening in the classroom, that's your creation, right? So anything from a worksheet to an essay, to a video that they've created, to anything, okay? So you're going to create first, kids are going to create naturally in the classroom, and then you're going to collect those creations somehow digitally. And of course, today we're talking Google Drive, right? Because we're talking about Google tools. So I'll talk about the hows of that in a little bit. And then what happens is you have to organize that stuff. And so this is what's really great, because it teaches kids about creating folders. It gives them opportunities to do some of that kind of work as they then go through the curation process. There's tons and tons of skills that are just kind of embedded into naturally all of these different steps along the way. And then reflection, reflection, reflection. Reflection can happen, guys, as they're creating. It can happen as they're collecting. It can happen as they're organizing, right? So it's not an afterthought. Again, this is not necessarily a linear process. And then there's sharing and there's publishing, and I'll talk more about this, but the idea of, hey, I'm putting this thing together and I might share it with my friends sitting next to me, or I might share it with the classroom across the hall, or maybe I'm going to share it outside the building, maybe share it with my parents, depending on, the acceptable use policy of your school and your own professional and personal objectives for it. We'll talk more about sharing and publishing. So to begin with, we're going to take anything that we've created, right? And we've got to get it from physical to digital. So, iPads, Chromebooks, phones, digital cameras, digital video cameras, they're all, they're going to be our tools for taking physical artifacts and making them digital. Okay. So snapping a picture of absolutely anything or doing a quick video of anything. Okay. So we know that if kids have got Chromebooks, a quick Flipgrid video that someone creates, or just using Screencastify, we can use any of those kinds of tools to do video or to do the still images as well. Okay, so we want to start there. And then we want to think about putting it all together. So this is a little bit more about this kind of 4 or 5 step process. And you guys, again, you may be collecting along the way, or you may say to yourself at the end of the year, hey, I want to go back and do some collecting. So what you're going to need to think about here is this going to be a year-long process? Or is this going to be a single unit of study? Is it going to be a month-long process, right? Because if you've never created portfolios before, this can seem overwhelming, okay? And I don't want it to be. So where I started when I started creating portfolios is I literally took a unit of study. I had a 5th grade classroom that was exploring civil rights and Martin Luther King in January. I had just taken a master's course all about digital portfolios. And so I thought, let's try it, right? This is back when I was teaching. And so we just decided, the classroom teacher and I decided, we're going to get 5 artifacts from each kid. Okay, they're going to have an essay, they're going to have a slideshow, they're going to have a photo collage, so on and so forth, right? And if we can somehow put those together into a quote, a portfolio, then we're going to call it a win. So keep all of this in mind, and I will share these slides with you, but the process is really up to you in terms of your objectives. So of course, we're going to start by collecting. And like I said, anything that you're going to do in school, anything that's going to happen in the classroom or maybe outside of the classroom can be included in a portfolio. So anything from performances and speeches, that reading fluency practice, if you're a music or an art teacher, the kind of practice or performance or final products or drafts along the way, those are all things that can be included and that you can collect to include in a digital portfolio. And when you think about, depending on your device, you can, if kids are one-to-one with iPads, maybe, there's an album, in the photos or on the camera roll of the iPad, or, you can of course put stuff up to Google Drive. When you do that, then, you can have your folders within folders, and this is going to get even little guys starting to be familiar and fluent with some of those processes as well. So, what are things that we might collect, right? So we might have digital artifacts. You might have that Flipgrid video. You might have a blog that kids have written. Maybe they created a Google site, to explain some kind of content. Of course, our Google Docs, things like that, right? But basically anything that's happening, whether it's physical or whether it's digital, just needs to be collected together and put into a folder of some sort. Now, I will tell you, give me 1 second. I just want to show you. Let me skip ahead here to a slide that has this link here. I will tell you that when I was working with my 6th grade students, some of their artifacts were Google tools, right? So they were a Google slideshow, they were a Google document. and they were, easily put into a folder. But some of them, for example, Flipgrid, that's not something that we can put into necessarily easily put into a Google Drive folder. So I used a spreadsheet, just a Google sheet, to start to kind of collect all of the artifacts. And so this is one way of being able to, organize information. I also found that this was not intuitive for kids. So it became this huge learning opportunity because they really didn't understand even just how a spreadsheet worked, right? Like this whole line, everything here goes together, that kind of thing. So you have to think about this kind of stuff and how you're going to organize it and how you're going to make it manageable for kids as you go along. I'm going to stop for just a second and see if anybody has a question or a comment. Feel free to unmute and ask your question or type it in the chat before I kind of jump in and start talking about curation. I see we're up to about 35 people. For those of you that weren't here at the very beginning, my name is Avra, and I'm an instructor with EdTechTeacher. We are obviously talking digital portfolios today, and you are welcome to participate as much or as little as makes sense for you. So I'm not seeing any questions or comments coming in. I'm just going to keep going. Oh, Catherine, is it possible to get a copy of the template you showed with the links? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share these slides with you. And then you can absolutely, you'll be able, I'll show you when we get down there, but it's on a certain slide. You'll be able to just make a copy of it for sure. Absolutely. And it was something that, it was just something I quickly put together. I'm sure you can make it better, but yeah. Do you have kids use cameras on Chromebooks? I do. Meg, it depends what programs kids are using. So a lot of times I'll use like the camera function within Google Slides to take a picture of something. That's typically my go-to. But I also have used, like, there's the camera app on the Chromebook as well. So that one's good. And then sometimes people are Seesaw users, right? So then you can take a quick picture with Seesaw as well. But yeah, if you have any more questions on that, specific questions on how to do it, let me know. But that tends to be easy for kids, especially Google Slides, because then even if you fill up an entire Google slide, right? So for those of you that aren't sure what I'm talking about, if we just here in Google Slides go insert an image and we come on down to camera. All right, let's see if I can find something to take a picture of here. I don't have anything, so I'll just take a picture of myself. Okay, so then we can just take a picture and throw it right in here into slides, right? And then what's neat about this is that if kids wanted to take it and put it in a different environment, they could by downloading the slide, or you can take this and add text to it and that kind of thing. So that's usually what I find to be the easiest. And kids, of course, can just hold up whatever they're working on. So whether that's a mini whiteboard, individual whiteboard with a math problem, or some kind of essay that they've written, handwritten paper, whatever it is. So, all right, thanks so much for asking questions, you guys. I appreciate it. So curation, okay? Curation is really about what gets included. Okay, so when I talk to kids about curation, I tell them, what a museum curator is, someone who's deciding what's going into the different, in this case, the different pages or the different parts of the portfolio. This is determined by your objective. So you guys, you need to decide like what your objective is. So if it's showcase, then it's going to be their best work. If it's growth, then you need to make sure that they pick the stuff where they struggled as well as pick the stuff where they succeeded, that kind of thing. Tiffany, what about 3D projects, math manipulatives that students can't hold up? Yeah, that's a good question. Since going from iPads to Chromebooks, that's tough. So I have a couple different things. I mean, obviously you're probably not asking the question if you've got the Chromebooks that flip around, right? You must have ones that just don't have any kind of flexibility besides being like the L-shaped. I have had kids do it forward facing only. I have had kids do it. I mean, they get better at it. Like if I were building with my, let's see, you guys are going to get to see here. Let's try it. insert, this is not ideal, and obviously you've probably done it before, but I have done this with kids. Like, we can do this kind of a thing here. We've got my pencil, my lip gloss, my chapstick, and my remote for my thing. So we could do this kind of a number, for lack of a better idea. Otherwise, I've gone through the process as a teacher of taking out my phone and taking pictures. It's not ideal. And then putting them into kids, what I've done, I did this with a group of third graders last year. It wasn't last year because last year was the pandemic. I guess it was 19, but it was my son's class. He was in third grade, and I took a bunch of pictures and then I put them all into a Google Drive folder. And then I had them go in there. I shared it with the whole class. I had them go in there and pull out their pictures, the ones that were of them. And, it was tricky and it's not ideal. It also built some wonderful skills where then they were, learning to move files into the right places and that kind of thing. So, I'm not sure this is helping you a whole lot, but those are just some ideas off the top of my head. The ideal environment from my perspective is when like a classroom has at least one iPad, so that way it can be used and kids could go and take it and just take a picture, and then send it to themselves somehow or something like that. But those are great questions. So when we're thinking about the what, and when we're looking at curation and we're thinking about what kids are, what kind of stuff they're deciding, right? So was this an opportunity for pride and joy? Or, hey, is this evidence of, my growth or my increased skills? This was, for example, this was my daughter back when she was in 6th grade. The focus here, of course, was science, but also they were working on study skills. And so they were looking at strategies for success, right, with their studying. And so here she says, I'm proud of the A that I earned on this test. I remember I studied for 2 nights using flashcards and rereading the chapters as my strategies for success. So this, when we were collecting this into her portfolio, the objective here was showing and demonstrating her ways of being successful. So it was really about the study skills and not necessarily just about, the science, but the content there, was there as well. So it's all about what kind of questions you're asking. Are you having kids ask themselves, does this essay demonstrate growth and that kind of thing? Was I successful? Why do I think my teacher created this learning experience for me? What would I do differently next time? What did I learn? Why did I learn it? All of these kinds of questions, if you get kids really used to reflecting and answering them, then again, their metacognitive skills get built. They will not know the answers to these at first. It'll take a while and it takes that kind of practice. And that's the kind of neat thing that'll happen if you kind of engage in this portfolio process. Sometimes it's neat to ask them too, like, what were all the steps that you took? What was all the learning that happened? What were all the things that we did? This is a final product. So you guys, this was a timeline product that my 8th graders, when I was teaching, had done, but it was based on months of research. So what the kids had done is they'd actually gone and visited a local retirement home, and they were each teamed up with an adult who kind of told them their life story. And so then they were comparing and contrasting what was happening in that person's life with what was happening around the world and in America. So while this simple timeline, is a 1-pager, it was in Google Drawings, it was evidence of lots and lots of discussion and research and all of that. So that can be neat stuff to ask kids as well. So, thinking about collaboration, whatever your focus is in your classroom, that's what you want to get kids reflecting about. So, hey, this was a collaborative essay. How well did we collaborate? Were we able to work well together? That kind of thing. So those are kind of some of the things to think about when you're kind of going through the curation and the reflection process. And then you need to decide yourself how much sharing and editing and all of that's going to take place and who you're going to share it with. So we know that anytime that kids share their work, even if it's just with a small group in their class or a partner, it changes the way that they look at their own work. They look at it with a more critical eye when they know that there's going to be an audience, right? So when they work together, they can give each other suggestions for improvement. And that kind of feedback is something that is difficult at first to give and to receive. So these kinds of skills get built into this process as well, because feedback, even as an adult, can be hard to receive at times, right? And making sure that we are using constructive criticism and appropriate feedback and all of that are all skills that I see in classrooms every day. And in this case, when we've got kids working together and maybe they're, curating and organizing and reflecting on their artifacts while they're sitting next to somebody, they can be having these conversations and sharing ideas with one another. So here's a slide, and you guys, I'm going to share these slides with you. So, you can take a screenshot of this if you want, but these are a bunch of different conversation or collaboration questions that you might ask kids. I love asking them, if this is something that they would feel proud of, and if not, why not? How they felt as they were working on something. So if they've written an essay, how'd you feel along the way? Or throughout a science lab, what were your feelings? What were you thinking? How did your work change from start to finish? So if it's a longer project, how did your thinking change? So building in even some of those project zero kind of visible thinking routines, think, pair, share, and, I used to think, but now I think. Those kinds of things can be really awesome, and it can kind of, deepen the experience as well. So when we think about publishing can be small or it can be wide. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's out there for the whole world to see. Okay. The idea is just a wider audience, someone beyond you, right? Beyond you as the teacher. So maybe they publish it to their small group in the classroom, or maybe, like I said, they publish it, you swap with the classroom across the hall. So maybe you're a 5th grade teacher and the 5th grade teacher across the hall is also working on portfolios, and you have a portfolio walk one afternoon. And so you flip-flop and you go and look at each other's portfolios. You can make, when we are using Google tools, you guys know we can make things as private or as public as we want them to be. Now, publishing, another question to consider is publishing along the way or publishing all at once at the end. Okay, so older kids, if you were to create a Google site, for example, and have them create it kind of like a blog where they're putting up a new artifact each week, that might be something where then the other kids in the class are reading each other's blogs or reading each other's websites and giving each other feedback, kind of like that blogging, environment. And so then that feedback cycle is happening all year long. Or maybe you even take it further and you share it with parents, and parents are giving kids feedback along the way. That's one way of doing it. Or you might just be collecting and curating and organizing and reflecting all year long. And then at the end of the year or at the end of the month, whatever your time frame is for the portfolios, then, that might be when you publish. So I'm just looking at the chat real quick, guys, because I had a couple things popped in, and it looks like you guys are chatting with each other. All right, and so I am going to just go ahead and throw the link to the chat, or link to the slides into the chat real quick so that folks can grab them if they want. All righty, because we had a couple people that needed to leave early. All right, so thinking about publishing, how wide do you want it to be? How do you want it to go? Do you want it to be something that goes on all year? Or do you want it to be something that is, just like a big moment at the end of the year? Maybe parents come in and you have a portfolio night, that kind of thing. You need to think about what your purpose is. What's your objective for publishing? Typically, our purpose is pride, right? And joy. So when I think about this, again, this is my daughter. She was Ronald Reagan. This is publishing circa 2008, guys. Okay. This was an academic fair in the evening, and she can still tell you stuff about Ronald Reagan. Why? Because she got to wear her big brother's shirt. She got to wear Papa's tie. Grandma and Grandpa came, and everyone was there to celebrate and look at the things that she'd done in her classroom, right? So when kids make this emotional connection to content, that's when they remember stuff. She remembers this night because it was awesome, right? And it meant something to her. So when we think about that, that's one reason that publishing is awesome. We also know, this is common sense media information, guys. We also know that publishing is so important because there is so much social media, and kids are, quote, publishing by putting things out there online once they're a little bit older, and sometimes even younger than we realize, right? I think about the time when Allie, when she was in 2nd grade, I think, and she found Club Penguin, I don't know if anyone remembers Club Penguin, but I was the technology coordinator at my school, and I knew she was playing this fun game, but I had no idea that she could chat with people in there. Now, it wasn't a real chat, and I think she had to pick from canned phrases, but still, there was the opportunity for her to talk to someone she didn't know. And that freaked me out, right? So these kinds of issues, we are able to build in kind of teachable moments and organic conversations about what's okay to publish, what's okay to put out there online. All those digital citizenship things that we want to do anyway can happen naturally throughout the portfolio process. Just because if you are publishing out to even just parents and maybe aunts and uncles, maybe it's not public for everyone to see on the web, but it is for those who have the link, that kind of thing. These kind of topics can come up, right? You guys, I think the big thing for me is that when this Rushton Hurley quote, when children create for the world, they make it good. When they only create for their teacher, they make it good enough. Okay. Think about that. I think about that as myself as a high schooler. Okay. Freshman year, I was in acting class and I was in algebra class. And in algebra class, I got a B- because mom said you have to get A's and B's. If you get a C, you're going to be grounded. Okay. So mom and dad and my teacher were the only ones that were going to see my quizzes. So that's, well, I also wasn't good at math, but that's how hard I worked, right? Versus acting, like there was an audience there. I had to do a monologue. I had to stand up there on stage and there were people, so I made that really good, or tried to anyway, instead of just good enough. I think about my 8th grade students when they were making a student newspaper, a digital newspaper, and the difference that it changed in them once we started to get an audience. At first, nobody was looking at the website that we'd built, but then we had started to kind of promote it somewhat and people started looking at it. And all of a sudden they were a lot more concerned about their articles and that kind of thing. So that's all a lot of the how and the why. And now I'm going to just put some ideas in your head for structure and organization, some things to ask yourself. And then I want to dive into like the actual tools and talk about how we can put all this together. I'm just going to double check the chat real quick and see if anybody else asked anything. All right. So considerations for structure. All right. How are you going to organize it? How do you want to do it? Okay. Chronologically, is typical. A lot of times people do it chronologically. Sometimes people do it topically. Okay. So they do it based on whatever the topics are. So maybe by units of study or something like that. You could do it by learning objectives or standards if you wanted, or you could allow student choice in this environment. You could, depending on the age of your kids, your own comfort level with the different programs, you could allow students decide whether they want to do, say we're going to have a year-long portfolio. Do you want September, October, November, or do you want it to be by units of study, or do you want it to be by curricular area? It's up to you. And so you can decide that. Maybe you want to set it up in a way that shows growth. So maybe chronologically makes sense for that. I've seen some teachers create like a running record, with all of the different skills that need to be mastered. And then it's like a checklist as well. So there's, endless opportunities for, differences here. And really, ultimately, there's no wrong way to do it. You just need to decide. So deciding it ahead of time, a lot of times helps, even if you decide to let them decide, having this kind of structure in place is good. Scope. So I've kind of talked about this a little bit, but like, how big do you want it to be? How long of an experience is it going to be? I really think that if it's the first time around, if you are like an instructional technology support person, specialist, or coach or director, you might want your teachers to start small here. And if you're a teacher, start small, because I found that when I bite off more than I can chew, I can rapidly get frustrated and disheartened. I don't know about you guys. Have you ever started a project at the beginning of the year and you're like, all right, I'm doing this. We're going to do this. And it's going to be like this really awesome thing. And then all of a sudden it's November and you're like, oh my gosh, we've got parent teacher conferences are coming up. Winter break is right around the corner and I haven't touched those portfolios in 2 weeks, right? So if you start with something small and manageable, you may have success initially and your kids will have success, right? Like, all right, we nailed it. We've got a portfolio done. Also, when you start small, you're going to figure out what you like and you're going to figure out what you don't like. And you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn from those mistakes. You're going to go, okay, when I do this again, here's how I'm going to change it, right? So if you're an elementary teacher, Are you going to pull all the different curricular areas together? What about the ones that happen outside your classroom? So art and music, PE, like, are you going to try to have those special classes be included? Or middle school and high school, maybe you're an ELA teacher and you're really excited about this and you're thinking writing portfolios for your kids. Do you want to involve the rest of your team? Do you want the math folks to be in there and the social studies and science folks to be in there? Or do you want to keep it just, small and manageable yourself? Anytime that you're involving those other classrooms, those other colleagues, obviously that becomes, a lot more complex. Obviously becomes more robust, but it also can be more time consuming and we don't always have a lot of time. So consider the scope and make, good choices about that. And then organization. So this is that slide that's got the Google sheet here, right here. Okay. So what is it, guys? It's slide 32 for those of you that kind of wanted to see that spreadsheet. So, how do you want to organize it? Now I throw Seesaw in there, even though this is a Google workshop, just because a lot of folks do use Seesaw. And remember that you can use your 3 dots on any of the artifacts that kids create and export that stuff out, right? So it can be downloaded to the hard drive of the Chromebook and then uploaded to Google Drive. A video can, okay, like a screencast that they make. Obviously, when they make just their page, any activity that you've created, any of that can be exported out and then put into Google Drive. I've done this with teachers. It takes some doing, okay, and it's something that kids have to practice doing to get good at, but it's possible, just so you know, okay? But typically what I would think about would be a Google Drive folder, and then possibly folders within folders, right? I do love the Google Sheet for things like Flipgrid videos. So you might include a Google Sheet that is simply for non-Googly products, right? So for your Flipgrids or your Adobe, well, it's not Adobe Spark anymore, Adobe Creative Cloud, stuff that you've created there, or Canva productions, anything that you put together in a different web tool, you might have a Google Sheet for that. And that way, then as you're pulling it all together, you go to that and you put all your Googly stuff in, but then you can maybe make links out to those other products. So think about the organization as you get started. And then you guys, I would suggest that you have an honest conversation with yourself about your own comfort level and your own experience, because you want to ask yourself, do I want to let my comfort level dictate the experience? So, hey, do I want to let my kids pick and choose and use all different programs? Maybe, but if that's stressful for you, don't do it. If any part of this is stressful for you, find a way to do it differently, because if you don't love the project, if you don't feel completely comfortable with the project, you're not going to see it through. And then you're just going to feel stressed and disheartened, and that'll trickle down to your kids. Okay. So don't feel badly if you say, you know what, all I can do this year is a Google Drive folder with a bunch of stuff in it. We're going to call that a portfolio, because you know what, that is a portfolio. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. And then maybe next year you decide to put it into a slideshow. And then maybe a couple of years down the road, we're going to get brave and head to Google Sites. Okay. There's a whole continuum of complexity here that I'm going to talk about next. Lastly, requirements and templates, right? So maybe you create something and you make a copy for each kid in Google Classroom and you push it out to them. Maybe you make a slideshow that's got just placeholders, okay, for all of the different artifacts. And then kids just fill in the blanks, right? They put their different stuff in. That's great. Maybe you keep it open-ended. Then you just have like a list of requirements. Maybe you're working with older kids and they're going to be in Google Sites, and you don't really care if they do it chronologically or topically, but hey, everybody needs to have a table of contents. Everybody needs to have a home page, or, those kinds of things. So consider that ahead of time and think about whether or not, what makes sense for you. Okay. So lastly, guys, and we've got the perfect amount of time for this. I want to spend the last part of our webinar today talking about platforms and talking about, what programs we might use to actually do this. So you decide whether or not you want to give kids choice. Okay. Might be easier if you are someone who, 2 slides ago thought to yourself, okay, I can only handle so much. No problem. Right. Do what's right for you. So let's start with Google Drive. You guys, what did I talk about earlier? I talked about that writing portfolio that started in 2000 and went up through, 2015, all those years I was at my school. It was a file folder. This is a file folder, right? So I'm going to click on this and just show you this actual example. Google Drive has file folders in it, and all your artifacts can be in here, right? So you can have, hold on a second, I want to put this in grid view. You can have slideshows, you can have, you know, Google Drawings, you can have PDF files, you can even have audio files if you want to. So you could have an audio file where you talk about kids talk about some stuff. So maybe you use something like online voice recorder, right? So if we do a quick onlinevoicerecorder.com, this doesn't take a login at all, okay? I know that says login. I've never once logged into this. All I do is teach my kids to scroll down past the ads and then hit the red button. And now I can record, and I'm able to say whatever I want. I can reflect on stuff. I can speak. I can do whatever here. We can hit stop. And then you guys, if I hit save, then it, you know, it's just downloading it here to my downloads. So at that point, I can come to my Google Drive and I can just bring this right up here. Okay. So kids, older kids especially, can learn to do that. You can also use Flipgrid or Screencastify. You know, if online voice recorder is not acceptable in your school district, Flipgrid and Screencastify both have wonderful, you know, audio only options as well. So just keep in mind that Google Drive can house all of these different file types, right? And then if you've got ones that are links out to Canva or other programs, you may need to have that spreadsheet in here listed as well. Okay, so that's kind of the basic, right? That might be the most rudimentary of all of them. It's just a folder, but it works and it's a possibility for you. Okay, if you are ready to go to the next level, you might think Google Docs. Okay, so Google Docs tends to be a program that a lot of folks are pretty comfortable with, but there are some unique things in Google Docs that make it a good portfolio option. There are some things about Google Docs that make it less. So let me talk about that. Okay. So if we created something, first of all, you could create something that was much prettier and much more aesthetically appealing than this, but just to show you how basic it can be, right? We can have a headline with that's a link to the actual work, right? So here's my creative writing essay. Here's a link to Cameron's essay. Okay. And then underneath it, you know, we've got it right here, larger, blue, underlined, and then we can have a quick reflection right here if we wanted to. Okay. You guys, before Moat went paid, so Moat is a audio recording tool that allows you to record inside of the different Google products. Before it really put up its paywall in December, I would have been talking about using it as a reflection possibility here. I'm not going to go there right now just because I know a lot of folks don't have it and it costs money. So I don't, you know, but for those of you that do have it, if any of you have the paid subscription for it, you know, that'd be a way to record audio and have kids talk about their essay and that kind of thing. Because when they can reflect verbally versus, you know, versus doing it in writing, it can be better. But Google Docs does provide for a space where, you know, you can have a link to the actual product, to the actual artifact, and then, you know, a space for reflection below it. Now, another thing you could do here would be to use Screencastify, right? And what kids can do is they can go on Screencastify and hit record. And then as they do this, they can reflect on their process here. Okay, so maybe the link to the actual Google Doc is in the portfolio, but also the link to the screencast where the student is talking about their experience. Hey, this was my essay. And as you can see, there were lots of comments from my teacher. So it was a little bit overwhelming because there were lots of back and forth. And when I thought I was done, I wasn't really done, and so on and so forth, right? So that becomes something that can be an artifact as well. Kids can open up anything that they've done digitally, just record using Screencastify and be able to talk through their slides, their document, their drawing, their spreadsheet, their whatever, you know, anything that they've done. Maybe they're even in a coding class or something like that, and they're, you know, opening up and recording their screen and showing the different things they've done in a coding program. Okay, lots of possibilities. And then that link can be included here in a Google Doc. Okay, so the other thing to know is that this is just a table of contents. Okay, so you guys, I'm going to just delete this. Let's see if I can just get the whole thing to delete so I can make it again and show you. When you create headings inside of Google Docs, so the way that you do that is by highlighting words and coming up here to this drop-down menu right here. And you can make this heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, depending on what size you want it to be. When you do that, then what happens is you get, of course, these links going down the left-hand side, but then also they become items that can be part of a table of contents. So if this becomes something that is 2 or 3 months long, maybe it's a multi-page document, right? What we can do is say insert, and we can go on down. Why can't I find it? I'm losing my mind here. Hold on a second. Did they put it somewhere else and I'm forgetting? Someone wants to jump in and help me as I'm struggling here. Where is my table of contents? Okay, literally just did this yesterday and now I can't find it. Isn't that fun when you can't find what you want in front of 30 people you don't know? I love this. Okay, losing my mind, can't find it. But there is a, well, you saw it. There is a way to create, I'm going to undo my deleting of it. There is a way to create a table of contents. Bottom of the insert menu. Let me look. Yes, and you know what? You're right. It's down here. Thank you. I
have to highlight the words first and then do that.
Okay.
So it knows what to make the table of contents out of.
Oh, here we go. All right. So thank you. It's at the very bottom. Appreciate it, Meg. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, it's right here. All right. And so then you can choose with page numbers or without. It was hiding from me. So that insert menu has gotten longer. And then, yeah, it's right here. So, and thanks for the suggestion. So you can highlight the whole section too as well, and then be able to create that table of contents. So the Google Docs is there might be number 2 on the list of like in terms of complexity, right? Google Drive is basic, and then Google Docs would be the next one. All right. So now let's look, let me close a couple of these. Let's look at the next option, and that would be slides. So the cool thing about slides, guys, is that obviously we've got opportunities for video embedded in there, right? We can get Google Drive videos in there as well as YouTube videos in there, and then images move around so nicely. And yeah, you can put images in Google Docs, but it just makes me a little crazy. So I tend to turn to slides for this kind of thing. So I've got 2 different examples to show you. One is the single unit. Okay, so this is similar to what I did with that. Can't remember if it was a 5th or 6th grade class when we were doing the Martin Luther King. Okay, so we started out with a title page, and then we had a table of contents page. Here, these were built individually. I think there's an add-on that lets you create a table of contents, but I was just teaching kids to write something up, and then put the title of their slide in there, and then highlight it and create a link to the different slides. But in here, you can kind of see that we can link out to a specific artifact. We can put reflection in here if we want. You could do that screencastify process. So for example, let me do insert and video, and we'll see if that video that I just created, we'll see if it's processed yet. Let's see if I could throw it in there. All right, so here's that discussion that I just had about this creative writing essay, right? So then you could have a link to the student's essay, and then also an embedded video where the kid is talking about his process or her process with having created it, and their reflection about it. So the nice thing about slides, as we know, is that they lend themselves to being like a notebook or the pages of a book. So that becomes a really easy way to create a nice portfolio. And so you guys can take a look at all of these. There's lots and lots of possibilities here. And then lastly, and then let me show you the other one. That one, kids kind of created, when I did it with them, they kind of created it on their own, and there wasn't a specific template that we necessarily pushed out. We let them choose kind of the way that they wanted to create it. This, I worked with a middle school that you did something like this, and you guys will see this is kind of the converse of that. It's much more structured. Okay, so every kid got a slideshow that looked like this, and then there was a section for each of their curricular areas, and then there were specific pages with specific criteria, that kind of thing. So let me just make this bigger so you can kind of see. They had it all set up a specific way, so you as a school or a teacher could decide like, hey, I want to set it up a specific way. and have certain criteria in there and all of that, or you could have it be very open-ended. Okay, so lots of different ways to kind of organize these portfolios. But the thing with slides is that it offers a lot of flexibility and lots of opportunities for audio and video to kind of be built in there as well. Going back to the Moat or the online voice recorder, kids can insert in Google Slides, we can insert audio. Okay, and so we can pull up, any kind of audio that we have recorded and bring it in here. Or if you are someone that, is paying for Moat, you can use Moat to do that as well. Okay, so that's Google Slides. That would be maybe the next level. And then, the big one would be Google Sites. And this is one where if you are new to Google products or you're kind of overwhelmed by everything I've said today, then Google Sites isn't for you. But if you haven't been into Google Sites in a while, you should go, because it's gotten better and better, and it's just getting better all the time. So I teach at a local university, and my students are pre-service teachers, and I didn't link this one, so I will put the link in there. So I'll just make it bigger and then make it so that you guys can kind of see it. Hold on one second. I was going to try to go to it. I apologize, I didn't create the link, but when you've got a Google site, you can have all your different pages. You can have navigational menus. So this student chose to have a navigational menu that goes down the left-hand side. You can also have a navigational menu that goes across the top. And Google Sites really pulls together all of the different Google products. You can, put a document in there. You can put a video in there. You can put a calendar in there. You can put a map in there. There's a ton of stuff. So let me click on this one and actually kind of show you around. You're welcome, Marcia. Have a good day. Let me just show you just quickly around Google Sites. So I know we're down to about 5 minutes, but I want you to just kind of see some possibilities here. So, as you can see, I've kind of got this set up as a demo portfolio, and hey, we've just doing it chronologically, right? And then just to kind of show you what's possible here. This is what it looks like, if you put in that essay. Okay, so a Google Doc can be put in there. A Google Doc can fill the whole space, or you can have it where you've got a page of all your ELA stuff, or all the different essays, or all the different journal entries, or whatever it was that kids did in September, for example. So when you're in Google Sites, you guys, you can double click in this area, and then you get this little circle right here. And this is like an insert circle. Okay. It also, the stuff appears over here in the top right. Okay. So text box or images. Okay. These images, you guys, would be images that are going to come from your kind of cloud storage. So this would be stuff from Google Drive or Google Photos, or even like a Google image search. You can actually just do a Google image search right within here. So, you can do this kind of a number and bring something in like this. If you've got something on the hard drive of your computer, or kids have something on the hard drive of their Chromebook, then they want to use the upload button instead. Okay, so they can pull something, you can pull anything up and put it here. And then here, this is going to be from Drive. So that's going to let you pull in slideshows or spreadsheets or anything. Okay. And then lastly, you guys, this embed is magic. Okay, so if you've got a Flipgrid video and you've got the link to it, you can click on embed, and by URL you can embed a Flipgrid video. You can embed a book creator book, pretty much anything that you can find that has either embed code or a lot of the stuff that has just the URL. You can put that in here too. So you can take, everything that's happening in schools and in classrooms and pull it all together here into into a Google site. And it's a powerful program, and but I've used it as low as 2nd grade. Obviously, teachers of littles out there, you guys know that, you have to take more time and spend more time with your kiddos, getting them to learn this stuff. But if you put this in the hands of a 4th or a 5th grader and up, they're going to take it and run with it, because it's pretty intuitive. You build pages over here. Okay. And then you can put stuff on all the different pages. So let me just kind of show you some possibilities here. Images and text. Let's see what else I have in here. November. Oh, yes, it does. This is what a Flipgrid video looks like on here. Okay. So that was embedded using the embed tool. So lots and lots of possibilities with Google Sites. And so that probably is the most complex of the Google products. And it's going to be the one that's going to give you the most possibilities, and it's going to be the most robust. For those of you that haven't been in it in a couple of months, there are fonts now, there's font sizes. And so it's really developing into a tool that's pretty awesome. So I would definitely suggest checking it out. All right, you guys, we're down to like a minute or so. If anybody would like to reflect, unmute, talk to me, great, or type something in the chat, just something, hey, when I came into this is what I was thinking. I used to think, but now I think, or something that spoke to you today, something that resonated with you. I'm going to put the link to the slides into the chat again for all of you. And then we will put this up on our YouTube channel, okay? EdTechTeacher's YouTube channel. I'll get it up there probably tonight or by tomorrow, okay? So thanks for the chats that are coming in, and thank you for being here today. And I'm just gonna double check and see if there's any questions that are coming in. All right. Yeah, the old Google Sites was so much harder to use, Deb. So I would check out the new one because it's just getting better and better. So, all right, Sarah, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm going to throw the link in there one more time in case anybody needs it. But otherwise, you guys go and have a wonderful day. And thank you for your service to your students. And thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. All right. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to hang out.
I do have a question.
Great. Please ask it.
All right, so I've used sites before,
Uh-huh.
and I just don't know if, first of all, I don't know if our district gives the kids permissions to build their own site on the school account. But if they did, are you limited to just building one account or one site, or is there a way to build multiple sites with your account?
You can build as many as you want. So sites they've made it, hold on. They've made it, why can't I type? On a second, something's goofy. Give me 1 second. Was I in a different window or something? Can you hear that? Like it's not letting me type. Hold on 1 second.
I can hear it. I don't know why.
Is that weird? I don't either. Okay, we're gonna hit refresh and see what the story is. Okay, there's got to be a window open on my Mac somewhere that's unhappy with me. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop my screen share. Just give me a second, then I'll show you. So I know it. Okay, now it's working. All right, good. I'll go back to sharing. So Sites is just like all other Google products now. And the sites literally get stored in Drive, just like anything else. So when you're there, if you go to sites.google.com, it looks kind of like when you go to slides.google.com, you can see all your slideshows. So you can make as many as you want. They're unlimited. I mean, it's like in the personal world, it's limited. The only way it's limited is to how many gigabytes of storage you have. But, obviously we have tons and tons of that in the education world. So kids can make as many as they want. You just start a new one and and they're just like slideshows or anything else. They can even be put into folders, in Drive. So yeah, I mean, am I answering your question, Ken? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that is, yeah. And then the other thing I was thinking, do you have them publish it, or is it just they just share that so you can get in the back end, so to say?
You can do it either way. So when you do it, let me go to one that is already partly done, and I'll show you the difference. So you can share it out like you normally would share a document, and then you can publish. So, and it's kind of two different things. And so in here, like in the sharing, you'll see, like, let me come into this one here. Oh, I thought I could zoom.
Yeah, I get it now. Yeah, I see. I just wasn't aware that level was there. I've always just published stuff, didn't realize that.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, you can keep it, and you can just keep it within your domain if you want to. And then you're going to see, like, you can share it, you can collaborate. It's real time when they collaborate, so they can work together if they want. And then you decide like who can see it on the publish end and who can see it on the draft end. So yeah, it's a powerful tool. And Sarah, let me find YouTube. Let me find our EdTechTeacher page, and I'll put it in there for you. Hold on a second. Switch account, EdTechTeacher. Now how do I? Why am I a dork? Here, your channel. There we go. Let's see if this helps. Let me throw that in
this
there.
video, we're going to be taking a close look at a platform called Sutori. If you're not familiar with that, it's a versatile multimedia tool that.
Okay. So that, I think if you want to click on it, Sarah, and see if it works, that should be the link to our YouTube channel. And then in here, we've got a playlist. We've got different playlists, And the playlist is going to be the DESI workshops. So if you go into this one, you will
But you might get a
see
little,
that there are the other 16, or oh, maybe this one was number 18. Oops. But yeah, so there's 17 others that has a ton of information. So you're welcome. Does anybody else have a question? I appreciate those of you that kind of hung out and ask questions. That's always so nice for me to just hear from you. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I used to have fourth graders build sites just for, like, instead of a slideshow, it was just an option, and they loved it. It's very empowering to feel like you're building a website, So,
Yeah, I was thinking it might be nice for them to learn the tech skills too. So
yeah.
nothing else other than everybody. I teach high school, and everybody wants to fall back on slides. I'm actually at an online school, so.
Oh, yeah. Then good.
So
Yeah.
anyway, it's nice to learn a few new features and technology for them to learn and use. So that was great. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, you guys, I will let you all go. Thank you so much for being here today, and have a great one. Stay warm. It's really cold in Illinois, so usually our weather heads to the East Coast. So stay warm this weekend and have a good one. All right. Thank you.